Where's my Zoom?
Kevin Hamilton.
There we got it.
I was debating on whether or not to come in.
All right. There you go.
Want me to take minutes tonight?
If you would, yes, please.
Jim, if that sounds okay, I'll take the minutes tonight since you're coming in from afar.
I can just barely hear you, Chris.
I think because we got both your faces there, so I think that's good, and that'll maybe help a little bit. But we do
Okay.
have I mean, can't do much about the microphone, but they're right in front there. So hopefully, you just have to speak up a little bit.
Okay.
All right. Oh, and what happened? We lost ourselves. No, we lost Kevin.
We lost Kevin.
And he went up before. It should pop right back in because he's already been promoted to a panelist. I'm gonna wait a minute before I leave to make sure that happens properly.
When we're done, we just need to.
You're just gonna hit N down here at the bottom. Right there. Yeah. Hopefully Kevin's right on his way back in. Okay. All right. So he did. Here, I'm gonna let you do this. Go up here by his name and go over to more. Click on more and click on promote to panelist right up at the top. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, and then you have to give it a second. Usually, there. See the delay that happens? Okay. Now, if it's much longer than that, you try it again, and then if it really fails, and you click the allow to talk.
Okay.
All right.
Okie doke.
Okay.
Thank you.
have
Go
my phone
home and
number?
relax.
You have my phone number if you need me. Can you write it down?
And is Peg going to be calling in? Do you know?
She said,
She and I talked, and she said she offered to come in, and I said, why don't you just give us your phone number and we'll call you if we need to, because I talked with her quite a bit about it.
okay. She just got home so she could reference it if you do call her.
And Jim, you're hearing us now, okay, right?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start then. It is 7:03. This is the Ordinance Review Committee meeting. Today is Thursday, 10th March, 2022. And we have 3 items on the agenda tonight. And approval of the agenda. Are there any objections to the agenda, any modifications? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to the first item. Ordinance amendments for the regulation of fences.
Did you get my email with some draft changes?
Unfortunately, I didn't really get to look it over very closely.
Guys, your audio is breaking up massively.
Jim, I sent out a draft of the fence ordinance with
Chris?
Yeah.
Chris, your audio is coming in about every third word.
Okay.
Go ahead with the meeting and I'll do what I can, but I'm not getting complete audio.
Okay. If you can understand me here, I had sent out a draft with some proposed changes to the fence ordinance as it stood.
I heard that loud and clear.
Okay. Do you want me to run
Yes.
those by you?
If you would, please.
Okay. I talked to the mayor about that aspect of the fence on the property line and the joint ownership. He tended to agree with David Simmons and me that it may be a direction we don't want to go. So, you know, it'll be what we decide tonight, but I did make amendments based on that. And the other thing that I did was I filled in where we had erred and left off temporary fence, types of temporary fence. So let me tell you what that resulted in. Let's see. First change would be on page 3 on Article 1304.02. Number 3 would change, and the draft I sent you said change fences and retaining walls may be installed up to but not over the property line. My suggested change is fences and retaining walls may be installed up to 2 inches from the property line. That would mean we would strike all of that 4th section below that, because there would not be joint ownership. I also today, because really what we're talking about is that's a concern where it's a boundary between 2 private landowners. So I have a draft that might work for that situation too, where we allow it on the public property, but not between 2 private landowners. That would change number 3 to say fences bordering town rights of way may be constructed up to but not over the property line. Fences bordering other private property may be constructed up to but not closer than 2 inches from the property line. So that's the first and the most major change. And then on Appendix A, if you have the draft that we got from our lawyer, the number 4, the green phrase would be omitted. So number 4 under Appendix A would just read, all fences must be installed with the finished side facing out, and going on there. And then the next change would be on Appendix B. This is page 6, line 32B, where we had just permitted fence types and then left everyone hanging. After that, I added chain link fences or substitutes approved by the ordinance compliance officer will be allowed. I also looked over David Simmons' question about letter E there on lines 41 through 44 about the graphics. He thought that that might be confusing because of what we already have in the sign ordinance. After looking that over, I kind of agreed with that. And so I would omit letter E, just take it out. And those would be all of the changes. I don't know, some of the wording, if you guys like these changes, basically, Kevin, you may want to play with the wording a little bit, but those were my suggestions.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Jim, did you have any thoughts?
I'm
on
okay
that?
as well.
Should I make that into a motion then?
Yes, please.
Okay. And how do you guys feel about that differentiating between the fences on the next to the public right of way as opposed to the fences next to private landowners?
I think that's a very good compromise.
Okay. Is that okay with you too, Jim?
I'm good.
Okay.
And I'd like to ask Kevin Hamilton, do you have any thoughts there or any input?
You're on mute, Kevin.
Yes, that sounds good. Main thing I was waiting on is the applicant provide boundary lines with either plat or markers or something. That's the main concern I have.
Uh-huh.
Right, and we do have that in there. That was,
Yeah, I thought you did.
already included, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
no changes to that.
Okay. Everything sounds good.
So since I'm going to need to retype some of this and send it to you, but I have basically read this, shall I move to recommend ordinance number 2022-01 with the changes or as amended. And I will send those to you electronically after the meeting.
Okay. Says motion to recommend ordinance 2022-01 for approval as amended.
Yes.
And I will second that.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
I
All right. Item number 2 on the agenda, ordinance for the regulation of vacant and uninhabitable vacant structures. We received the draft agenda from the mayor. I think it looked like to me this draft ordinance basically came directly out of Charlestown's ordinances.
Oh, is that where it came from?
I think so. I read over a little bit of the Charlestown ordinance, and as far as I can tell, it was pretty much the same. Let me read this for a second. I think I had a
Hello?
Yeah, the only thing I really have a concern about with this draft ordinance that the mayor sent over to us is that it calls for for a new board to be appointed, called the Vacant Structures Board. And as you know, we oftentimes have difficulty now getting residents in the town to volunteer for different commissions and committees and so forth due to our low population. And I think that might be a concern.
Wasn't it really defined though? It says it's going to consist of the mayor or his designee, the ordinance compliance officer. So Kevin doesn't get a choice in the matter. And one individual member at large selected by and to serve at the will and pleasure of the mayor. So it's really just one additional person. And then it has the fire chief and someone from county health department as non-voting members. So I don't think the volunteer base would be too much of a concern. I also don't see it being a very busy, a very busy board. I don't know, would you, Kevin? I know there are some things on the back burner now, but once it gets going, I wouldn't think it would keep you all too busy.
Yeah, once it gets going, right, it might be a while to catch up, but once it gets in motion, we figure out what we got to do. It might not be too bad.
I did have a few other questions and concerns, but how do you feel with that, Kevin?
So we would need either one or two people from the community to volunteer for appointment to this board, depending on whether or not the mayor decides to serve on the board. So we would need at least one person and possibly two. Hopefully we wouldn't have a problem getting one or two people to volunteer for it. And if that's the case, then
You okay with it?
I think so.
Okay. Now, I looked over things, and I also asked Hap Becker to look it over. She sent me some questions. Most of them well, let me just run through the list that she and I came up with. Basically, I like it real well, and I think Hap did too. She wondered if uninhabitable and unfit for human occupancy, if it's clear that that's going to include non-residential structures, like say the old church that's falling apart on West Ridge, or a commercial building downtown that's in bad shape. I don't know. To me, unfit for human occupancy might include those, but how do you feel? I think it's clear.
It's a really good point. I'll have to read this over again. Well, it's talking about occupancy. So that would seem to restrict it to residences.
which I don't think we want to. I know the mayor's already mentioned some buildings that are not residences. Unfit for human use, is that
Yeah, I think so, because human occupancy makes it sound like it's restricted to residences. But unfit for human use could include residential structures as well as others.
Mm-hmm. Are you okay with that, Jim?
I am.
So, well, on letter E, we'll scratch out occupancy and put use, but still call it uninhabitable because we're defining uninhabitable. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. And
Not fit for it's uninhabitable even for business use.
yeah. Let's see. Is occupied by more persons than permitted. Okay. Hap also wondered, I think she's being very particular on this because of one particular building that has been taken over by wild animals. She wondered if vermin or rat infested would include wild animals. When I looked up vermin, it seems okay to me. I think it's not a question that I think anyone's going to debate on. So I would be comfortable with leaving it as vermin or rat infested, to assume that that can also mean groundhogs and turkey vultures. Let's see. And living environment, she wondered if that had the same issue about excluding non-residences.
What is that?
At the end of 3. Or other equipment deemed essential for a safe and or healthful. How about if we change deemed essential for a safe and or healthful living environment, just to say deemed essential for safe and or healthful use? Would that take care of that concern?
It sounds reasonable to me.
Okay, so we're gonna, on number 3, we're taking out A before safe and or healthful, and taking out living environment, changing it to use. And Jim, chime in here if there's anything you disagree with, or and you too, Kevin, also if there's anything you feel.
Sounds good so far.
Okay. Next thing, we were wondering if this is an error, and Kevin Hamilton, you might be able to tell us if we're missing some special meaning here. But on letter D, 5D, capital D, it says any portion of the structure or any member, appurtenance, or ornamentation on the exterior thereof is not of sufficient strength or stability, or is not so anchored, attached, or fastened in place so as to be capable of resisting natural or artificial loads of 1 1/2 the original designed value. It sounds like we're expecting it to be stronger than what it was designed for. And I'm wondering if that's an error and if we could fix it by just taking out 1 and. So it would say artificial loads of 1/2 the original design value. But Kevin Hamilton, do you know if I'm missing something here?
No, I agree with you on that if you take that part out.
Okay, so we just take out 1
Yeah.
and, which is likely an error, and it'll say artificial loads of 1/2 the original design value.
Yes.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Now, Kevin Carden, you may be able to tell me, as I read over the registry fee and the actions taken on vacant and uninhabitable buildings, I wondered, is there going to be any kind of conflict with the state's tax auctions? Or is that just a different procedure? I mean, it could be addressing the same buildings, but would there be any conflicts there?
I really couldn't answer that. I think that's something that we would have to ask our attorney about,
Our attorney.
if there's any question there.
Okay, so let's put a note on that. That is kind of sprinkled through, I think, 2 different parts, but I noted it on the registry fee section, and below that where it talks if the registry fee is a delinquent. So check with the attorney. Okay. And then we come to my biggest concern, and again, Kevin Hamilton, you may be able to help us on this. It's in 1759-05, determination of uninhabitable status, corrective actions. Okay, on the next page, B1, it talks about demolition or removal of buildings. And here's how it reads right now. It says, due to the historic nature of most structures in Harpers Ferry, the removal and or demolition of the structure will require extensive reviews and approvals before removal or demolition actions are approved. Approvals will be required from the Harpers Ferry Planning Commission, the Landmarks Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, if appropriate, the Harpers Ferry Town Council, and other entities as deemed appropriate by the Town Council. Now, my problem with that is, other than contributing residences, I think our ordinances say almost zero about demolition. It's probably something we need to work on at some point. But the only thing, because we faced this in BZA before, really the only time that there's a specific procedure to go through defined in our ordinances that I know of is for contributing residences. Although it kind of makes sense that if someone's going to tear down a building, they ought to be talking to the OCO and make sure that it's safe and that it's going to go through the right channels. Kevin, do you have any guidance on that?
Are you asking, do I agree with that?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? I think that it would have to go on past me, would have to go BZA, all the commissions before anything is really tore down or dilapidated and taken down. Yeah, I agree with that procedure.
Yeah, it just seems to me that our ordinances really don't define it very well. And so I reworded this, what I just read to you, to be a little more flexible to the way
I like that.
Yeah, let me read this to you and see if y'all like it. That clause where it says due to the historic nature of most structures. Starting there, I just took that out and I say removal and or demolition of structures will not be allowed without the required review and approval process, including, when appropriate, review by the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Are you saying that's the way you worded it?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Are you saying that's what you changed it to?
That's what I changed it to.
That sounds good.
Okay, and the reason I am doing it is that, I just don't think our ordinances say anything about demolition requiring approval from the town council or planning commission at this point. And the only thing it does say specifically that I know of is that if it's a contributing structure, it has to be approved by the BZA. So this makes it a little more flexible. And even if we tighten up the ordinances on demolition later, this could still apply, right?
Yes, that would. That would apply.
Okay.
Could you read that change again?
Yeah. So we're taking it out where it starts with the sentence due to the historic nature and the rest of that paragraph, changing it to removal and or demolition of structures will not be allowed without the required review and approval process, comma, including, comma, when appropriate, comma, reviewed by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Jim, you hearing it okay? And do you like that change?
It's good to go.
Okay.
Did you say you was taking out the due to historical value? Is that what you said?
Yes. That's my suggestion. If everyone, if everyone likes that.
I just thought that part was put in there for the reason of having permission to demo something that's because of the historical value. I mean, that was just my thought.
Yeah. Well, this would say, this would throw it on all of our other ordinances and regulations that even if this building is falling apart, in order to really finish it off and remove it or demolish it, they'd have to follow any procedures throughout our ordinances. And that's just making it a little more flexible in my mind. because I don't think it's defined very well right now.
Okay, sounds good.
Let me read that again.
Uh-huh. What do you think, Ken?
Did you look at 131.09 where it talks about Historic Landmarks Commission reviewing demolition of buildings?
See, that is under certificate of appropriateness, which
Right.
our new ordinances kind of supplanted or changed to the BZA process.
Yeah, it's still in our ordinances right now, which is what I'm asking.
Yeah. I know we're not using certificate of appropriateness.
Okay.
That was, that whole process with Mark Sad and his overhaul.
Right.
I think we probably need to look at demolition requirements just to, I think the main thing for non-contributing structures is to probably go to the OCO and make sure that it's being done safely and not making a mess that's dangerous or
Yeah, I do know that we've talked before about the need to review our requirements for demolition.
And that was my reason for trying to make this flexible, saying, yeah, this is not defined here. It's defined, you have to go by whatever the rest of our ordinances say about demolition.
Right. Okay. Given that situation, then I think I'm fine with that change.
Okay. And then I think, we can look at demolition down the road and this will still work.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to look at demolition somewhere down the road at some point.
What I didn't have time to do, it says consideration of possible nuisance. I didn't have time to go through the nuisance laws and know what that means really. Let's see.
Now, I just have a couple of recommendations myself, but they're formatting things. So.
Okay. This is another question I'm not sure of. Maybe you all can tell me how you feel on this. Let's see, what is it under? 175907 C, under procedures, it says appeals to the Vacant Structures Board or Town Council shall be subject to the following procedural rules. And it goes through a list. And I'm wondering if the Town Council is appropriate for that, whether it would make more sense to say Vacant Structures Board or the BZA. I don't know.
Is the BZA given that authority by state code? One of the concerns that our town attorney expressed recently was that the BZA is only granted certain authority by the state. And I guess from the way I understood what he was saying, that authority could be modified through our home rule, maybe. But otherwise, we don't have the authority to modify the power of the BZA. And of course, the home rule process requires an amendment to the home rule plan, and then we'd have to approve an ordinance through the normal approval process, and then that gets submitted to the state for final approval at the end of the year. So it's a little more difficult than just a simple ordinance approval, normal ordinance approval process. So I'm not sure if we could grant that authority to the BZA or not.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's safer to leave it at the town council. Any thoughts, Jim or Kevin?
No, no, Chris.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Another question that Hap noted is the last sentence in the whole ordinance. Letter C on 175908, use of registry fees to have performed under section 175906, corrective actions ordered pursuant to section 175905. Her question was, does this mean that person A's fees can be used to correct person B's property? In other words, they're collecting money on these structures, and if it hasn't been used, I guess the board and the town have that to spend on other problems. I didn't have a problem with it. I think that, you know, it's actually those fees are kind of a penalty that there's no promise that it's going to be used on that particular building. Once it's in the town's coffers, they should be able to use it for similar issues, was my feeling. So I kind of like the flexibility. But I wanted to share that concern with you.
Yeah, I think that's fine. There was it's not directly related to this, but there was a landmark Supreme Court ruling quite a number of years ago that everybody has to study and has to learn about in constitutional law classes in college, called Kelo versus City of New London, Connecticut. And in that Supreme Court case, it was decided that, to basically paraphrase the outcome of that case, properties can be seized by eminent domain and then sold or granted to private entities as long as it's for the betterment of the community, the improvement of the community. And I see a direct analog between that case and using these fees for improving other properties in the town. I see a direct parallel there.
And maybe if building A is unsalvageable and that money's sitting there, maybe it can save another problem building, right?
I think so.
Are you okay with that, Jim? I think you're muted now.
Yeah, Jim, you're on mute.
So. I'm not sure
There's a way to unmute him.
can't remember. Yeah, so Jim, we're not hearing from you, but feel free to chime in here. Should we go through the changes we agreed to, or if you guys have other things you found to be concerned about, or do you want to go over?
I do, but like I said, they're formatting things.
Okay.
But I'll go through those quickly. In the definitions are numbered. One of the practices that's becoming more accepted and recommended now is in legislation where you have definitions, don't number them, so that if you need to add a definition in there later on, like say they're in alphabetical order, if you add a new definition, you can put it in its appropriate place alphabetically without having to change all the numbering and the rest of the definition section. In the planning section of our ordinances, if you look at the definitions there, they're not numbered for that reason. Okay. So I would remove those numbers in the definitions.
Okay.
1759.06, 07, and 08, I would change those to 0.90, 0.91, and 0.92. And that's for a similar reason, because if you need to make modifications to the ordinance later on, the penalties and so forth are still at the end of the ordinance.
You're leaving some gaps if you need it
right
to fill in. Okay.
And we've done that in a couple of other places in our ordinances as well. And then the last one is the use of the word shall. We've talked about this several times over the years. The use of the word shall in certain instances can be considered ambiguous, legally ambiguous. And so there's a movement away from the word shall anywhere that it's possible to remove that word. So I would like to go through this and recommend removing the word shall everywhere we can.
And it's preferred to use may or must.
May or must or may not.
Okay.
Or just removing the word shall altogether. There was one place here where removing the word shall from the sentence didn't change the meaning of the sentence at all.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember where that was. I just saw it a little bit ago. Well, for instance, in 1759.07C procedures, appeals to the Vacant Structures Board or Town Council shall be subject. You would change that to are subject. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't change the intended meaning there at all. So those are the only other things I have.
Okay. Jim, did you have any additions or any concerns you want to go over on this? I think you're still on mute.
Jim, if you can hear us, you're muted.
I can hear you now. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have any more concerns on this draft that you want to go over or change?
Hello?
Jim? Yes. Did you have any changes you would recommend or any questions? Any concerns?
I do
about this
not.
ordinance?
So, I don't know, do you want me to, well, what would be easiest? The only, for you to make notes of the definite changes that we're talking about and do it with your formatting changes, or do you want me to type up something? What's easiest on this?
I caught everything that you had there except for the 1759.05, the changes that you have there. I didn't get a note of those. So if you can send those to me.
Okay.
But everything else I have, I can make those changes.
And that's
before
the demolition we talked about, right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So, do you think we can come up with the formatting and that you can do all of that prior to Monday? And,
Yes. Yes.
okay. So I move that we recommend, what are we going to call it? Article 1759?
It'll be ordinance 2022-02.
2202-02?
2022-02.
Okay, I move that we recommend to the town council ordinance 2022-02 for first reading as amended.
Okay, and I will second that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
I,
All right. And then the last item on our agenda is ordinance amendments to allow for temporary special event vendor licenses. And that would be ordinance 2022-03. And this was sent to us by Pat after a discussion with the mayor. And I guess we need to call Pat.
If we have, I kind of talked over issues with her, so we can get her on the line if you want, or where I can tell you what she and I talked about.
Okay.
The only significant thing was well, first off, we talked about the need for this, and I totally agree with her that for things like the Flip Flop Festival, if we get a farm market going, we want to have some flexibility for folks who don't have regular business licenses. And so this would provide a temporary special event license. And she got this from Martinsburg. And basically we both agreed that it's pretty workable. I suggested to her, and she agreed, that maybe we want to add some wording that would allow for recurring events, such as if Mr. Jenkins here gets a farm market going, could we reword it so that it would allow for someone coming in once a week to sell their wares?
Well, I think in that case, they should, if they're coming in regularly, they should have a regular business license, I would think.
You think?
Yeah, because then you're not really talking about a special event. You're talking about a recurring event, which is sort of like it's like a business that's only open on weekends.
Mm-hmm.
It would be the same thing,
Okay.
I think.
Do you have any suggestions on that or any thoughts?
I do not.
Okay. Did you ever get any feedback from potential vendors on a farm market in Harpers Ferry about business license?
No feedback at all. When the last I tried the farmer's market, it was going to be Friday night.
Uh-huh.
And all of the vendors were not interested in a 2-hour farmer's market. They thought that was unviable.
Okay.
So if I propose it again, it'll be on Saturday. It'll be all day.
Yeah. Okay. So you didn't even get to the business license issue then.
Correct.
And then we also wondered if we need to restrict it to 3 special events in any calendar year. What if we have 4 festivals going on or things? And again, she said, well, maybe after 3, it's going to make more sense to get a regular license, but I don't know. Maybe the same deal.
You know, that's an excellent point. Where do you draw the line there between a special event and then it just being a regular business?
Mm-hmm.
I looked at some other municipalities around the state, including Morgantown, which I have their ordinance up here in front of me right now.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of a special event license, they call it give me just a second. They term it itinerant vendors. And that was a term I saw in quite a few places. And I don't think I remember seeing a definite number set on there for, you know, when does it no longer become a special event? When does it become just a business? A food truck or something. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think I would probably say, instead of 3 events in 1 year, I would probably say 4, based on quarters. Mm-hmm. That's just I'm just throwing that out there, but
I tend to agree with you. Jim, are you okay if we change 3 events to 4 special events?
Okay.
Because taxes have to be filed each quarter anyway, taxes. And I think that 4 is a better number than 3 based just on that.
Mm-hmm. And Pat and I did not talk about this one, but I did have a question whether it mentions vendors who are required to obtain a temporary special event license shall be exempt from municipal B&O tax for sales made during the temporary special event. Do we need to say, but not sales tax, or is that assumed? I mean, they'd have to be collecting for the state, right?
Yeah.
And
The state would require that if they have a license to sell.
should we call Pat on that question and get her input or experience on it?
Might be a good idea to
Okay.
get her on. Going back to the 4 events in a year ago,
Mhm.
we may even want to add in their vendors may only uh, 4 events in 1 year, not to exceed 1 per quarter, maybe.
I don't like that.
Okay.
You know why? Because what if we had, a harvest festival and old time Christmas end up being in the same order?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't think abuse is going to be likely, but I'd like to keep it flexible
Right.
in that way.
Okay. I can agree with that.
Okay. Let me get her on the phone about the sales tax. And Jim, let us know if you have other questions for her or concerns. Oops. Yeah, call failed. Do you have your phone?
Yeah,
I don't know what's going on here. Here's the number I have.
Okay, that's a 7.
579
Okay.
9396. I think I copied it down.
Yep, that's right. It's right there. It's already in my phone.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Pat. We're in the meeting right now and we have a question for you.
Okay.
I'll let Chris ask.
Yeah, we batted around that idea of the recurring events. We kind of decided not to do that because we thought that the regular license would be better for that kind of a situation. And we changed 3 to 4 special events in any calendar year just to give a little bit more wiggle room, like you and I talked about.
Yes. Sounds good.
And that could allow them, possibly 1 each quarter. That was my rationale behind that.
And I think that's fair. I think that sounds like a good plan.
And we're wondering, and I neglected to bring this up to you yesterday when we talked, but on that clause that talks about shall be exempt from B&O tax, do we need to make the point that add in something like, but not sales tax? I mean, are there any situations where they would not have to pay sales tax?
You know, that's a good point. And the language that I was presenting was similar, well, was Martinsburg, but it wouldn't hurt to put a sentence in to say state sales tax and the town 1% municipality tax still, I was going to say still conveys, but that's probably not the right word.
Still applies.
Yeah, they're still obligated to pay the 6% sales tax and the 1% municipality tax, because that goes right straight to the state, and then the state gives us back our money. So yeah, they still have to pay state tax in the municipal.
Hello?